Good morning, students. Today in your math lesson 93 on April 6th, 2020, we are going to be talking about comparative graphs. Comparative graphs display two or more sets of related data. So, first thing I want us to focus on is this thinking skill. I want us to analyze how many bars can you have in a bar graph? Well, you can have numerous bars in a bar graph. Bar graphs usually have or do not have a great number of bars. Why do you think that is? Well, one of the reasons is the bar graph would have to be huge if it had numerous bars. The other reason is that it gets confusing and it's harder to understand if we have too many bars. All right, it makes it difficult to compare data if there are too many bars. In our bar graph, in our double bar graph though, as you see, we are comparing two sets of data. We are comparing the average daily high temperature in January and July for 5 cities. All right, January is the lighter color blue, July is the darker color blue. We are comparing the cities of Rome, Italy, Caracas, Venezuela, Sydney, Australia, Paris, France, and Tokyo, Japan. So as we look at our table, we see our title, we see our temperature, and we see the names of the cities down below. We also see our legend that tells us what each color represents. So, in which city was the average July high temperature highest? Well, as we look, we can see that in Rome, Italy, July had an average high temperature of about 89 degrees. It's not quite to the 90-degree line. 89 degrees. So, in which city was the average January high temperature lowest? So, as we look at Paris, France, we can see right there that the average January high temperature is about 42 degrees in Paris. All right, so as you can see right there. Now, our next question in C is, which city had the smallest range between these temperatures? All right, which city had the smallest range between the temperatures? And we can see that Caracas, Venezuela, had the smallest range because it's nearest the equator. We actually go from about 70 degrees to about 78 degrees. And near the equator is warmer. The temperature doesn't vary too much throughout the year. All right, our next question for D is, which city is the average January high temperature greater than the average January or July high temperature? Well, here we go. Sydney, Australia is the answer to that question. Because in Sydney, Australia is warmer in January than it is in July because it is south of the equator. So January is in the summer and July is in the winter. All right, as we look at our next graph in example 2, we are comparing two or more things that change, or we are comparing actually the population of the cities of Austin and Pittsburgh. As you look at our legend right here, Austin is the darker line with the filled in darker blue circles. Pittsburgh is the lighter line with the open blue circles that are just clear. They're white. So, as we look at this graph, this is a double line graph. All right, so approximately what was Austin's population in 1970? In 1970, we come up here to 1970. We see that it is between 200,000 and 300,000, so we can say safely that it's approximately 250,000 people. Okay, population measures the number of people. As we look at the graph, the next question is, approximately how much did Pittsburgh's population decrease between 1950, right up there, until 2000? Well, we can see that this is between the 300,000 line and the 400,000 line, and so it's about 350,000. The population went from 700,000 to 350,000 in 50 years. So, as you would know, that is about half. The population decreased by about half. It's pretty amazing. All right. Now we are on to our lesson practice so quickly too. So when you look at your lesson practice, we have Shynara, Alice, Terrell, and Manuel. They each wrote 2 stories. This is the number of paragraphs for story 1, and this is the number of paragraphs for story 2. So Shynara wrote 8 paragraphs for story 1 and 8 paragraphs for story 2. Alice wrote 3 paragraphs for story 1 and 6 paragraphs for story 2. Terrell wrote 6 paragraphs for story 1, 7 for story 2, and Manuel wrote 7 paragraphs for story 1 and 10 for story 2. So our directions are to make a comparative horizontal bar graph to show the scores. There should be 2 bars for each student. All right, here we go. I have my title, paragraphs per story. I have my legend. Story 1 is a dark green. Story 2 is a light green. My scale goes from 0 to 2 to 4 to 6 to 8 to 10. So I'm going up by 2s, as you can see. So here we go. We have Shynara, who had written 8 paragraphs per story. And so her bars match. They're the exact same for story 1 and for story 2. Then we have Alice, and we can look and see that for story 1, Alice only had written 3 paragraphs. For story 2, she had written 6, correct? We have Terrell, who for story 1 wrote 6 paragraphs, and for story 2, he wrote 7. Then we'll move Manuel over here a little bit. Manuel for story 1 wrote 7 paragraphs and wrote 10 for story 2. So this is an example of the horizontal double bar graph. All right, you may move on to your homework. Now, I am going to tell you that today in your homework, you actually will not be practicing the bar graphs, but you will have, unless we do the real world example or real world connection, which we are not going to. But the last 3 questions, you need to pay attention. You're estimating on 28. On 29, you are also doing a little bit of estimation. But on 30, you have another question, and you have a hectare. So it says a square field that is 1 hectare is 10,000 square meters. They're asking you to describe how to use a calculator to find the length of each side of the field. So guess what? This will be the square root of 10,000 when you do this problem. So when I see you hopefully at 10 o'clock, you can ask me some questions about that. And of course, I have the answer. So good luck with your homework. We will see you soon. Guess what? Your mystery word today is Wolfgang. All right. Hope to see you later. Bye-bye.